Rushing to my flight, I tripped over a little girl by the gate. "Watch where you're sitting," I snapped. She smiled up at me and whispered, "Don't take that flight. Go home. Something's waiting for you." I tripped over a little girl sitting by gate 47 at O'Hare International Airport on Tuesday, March 12, 2024, at 2:47 p.m., 15 minutes before my flight to Chicago was supposed to board. My coffee, Grande Dark Roast, 4.75, still hot enough to burn, spilled across the gray carpet in a spreading stain that looked like accusation. My briefcase hit the floor with a crack that made people look up from their phones, made the businessman across from me wince, made me feel the familiar heat of embarrassment and anger rising in my chest. "Watch where you're sitting," I snapped at her, my voice louder than I'd intended, sharp enough to cut through the ambient airport noise of rolling suitcases and gate announcements and crying babies. She was maybe 6 years old, blonde hair in pigtails tied with blue ribbons, holding a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. One ear bent, the fur worn thin in places from being loved too hard. She was sitting cross-legged right in the middle of the walkway where people needed to pass, where anyone with half a brain would know not to sit, where she'd apparently decided was the perfect spot to play with her toy. She looked up at me and smiled, not the guilty smile of a child who knows she's done something wrong, not the scared smile of someone who'd just been yelled at by an angry stranger, just a calm, knowing smile that made something in my stomach twist uncomfortably. "Don't take that flight," she said, her voice clear and certain, like she was telling me a fact as obvious as the sky being blue. "Go home. Something's waiting for you." I stared at her, my briefcase still on the floor, coffee still seeping into the carpet, people still watching. "What? Go home," she repeated, still smiling that strange smile. "Trust me." A woman rushed over, mid-30s, stressed expression, diaper bag over one shoulder. "I'm so sorry, sir." She wanders off. The woman grabbed the girl's hand, started pulling her away. "Lily, how many times have I told you not to sit in the middle of—" They disappeared into the crowd of travelers, the woman's scolding voice fading into airport background noise. The little girl looking back at me once over her shoulder with that same knowing smile. I stood there in the middle of Gate 47's waiting area, heart pounding for reasons I couldn't quite name, briefcase at my feet, coffee stains spreading on the carpet like prophecy. Around me, travelers checked their phones, adjusted their carry-ons, lived their normal lives while something inside me screamed that nothing was normal about what had just happened. The boarding call came through the speakers, professional and cheerful. "We are now beginning final boarding for Flight 237 to Chicago O'Hare, departing at 3:05 p.m. All remaining passengers should proceed to the gate immediately." I looked at my ticket, seat 12A, aisle seat 487 one way, because I'd booked it yesterday when Marcus had called, insisting I needed to be in Chicago tomorrow morning for the deal, for the biggest opportunity our company had ever had, for the meeting that would make or break everything we'd built over the last 8 years. I looked at the gate, where the last few passengers were scanning their boarding passes and walking down the jetway. I looked back at where the little girl had been sitting, now empty except for my coffee stain. Something about her eyes, something about the certainty in her voice. I turned around, walked away from the gate, my legs moving before my brain had fully decided, my briefcase feeling heavier with each step. "Sir?" The woman at the counter called after me, her voice urgent. "Sir, last call for Flight 237. We need to close the door." I kept walking, through the terminal, past the Hudson News and the Starbucks and the families waiting at other gates, my heart still pounding, my mind trying to rationalize what I was doing. Walking away from a $2.3 million deal, walking away from 6 months of negotiations, walking away from everything Marcus had been pushing for since September. Got to the parking garage level 3, section E. My hands were shaking as I unlocked my car, a black BMW 5 Series I'd bought 3 years ago when the company had its first really profitable year. I sat behind the wheel for a full minute, staring at the concrete wall before I called my assistant. "Linda, cancel the Chicago meeting." "What? Mr. Harrison, this is the biggest deal we've ever—" I said cancel it. Tell them I had an emergency. Reschedule for next week. But Marcus said this was time sensitive, that if we don't close today, the investors will— I don't care what Marcus said. Cancel it. I hung up before she could argue more, before I could second guess myself, before the rational part of my brain could override whatever instinct had made me listen to a 6-year-old girl telling me to go home. I drove 23 minutes from O'Hare to our house in Evanston, the GPS showing 2:58 p.m., traffic lighter than usual for a Tuesday afternoon. The whole way I kept thinking about that girl, her smile, her certainty, the way she'd said, "Something's waiting for you," like she knew, like she could see something I couldn't. I pulled into my driveway at 3:21 p.m. My wife Rachel's car was there, the white Lexus SUV I'd bought her last Christmas, the one she'd cried over because it was too much, but I'd insisted because she deserved nice things, because 8 years of marriage marriage meant celebrating success together. She should be at her office. She was a real estate agent, and Tuesdays were her biggest showing days. She'd left at 7:30 a.m. this morning, saying she had back-to-back appointments until 5 p.m. I sat in my car in our driveway, staring at her Lexus, feeling that same twist in my stomach I'd felt at the airport. Something's waiting for you. I went inside. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels wrong, that feels heavy, that makes you aware of your own breathing and heartbeat. Our house, the 4-bedroom colonial we'd bought 6 years ago, decorated by Rachel with her perfect taste and her eye for detail, filled with furniture and art and memories of a life I'd thought was solid. Rachel? My voice echoed slightly in the high-ceilinged foyer. No answer. I walked through the living room, past the couch we'd picked out together at Crate and Barrel, past the photos on the mantle of our wedding and our vacations and our life. Walked up the stairs, each step creaking in familiar places, the sound loud in the silence. Heard sounds from the bedroom, voices, movement. My stomach dropped. That feeling when you know what's coming but your brain refuses to process it, refuses to make it real until you see it with your own eyes. I opened the door. My wife Rachel, naked in our bed, the bed we'd shared for 8 years, the bed where we'd talked about having kids someday, the bed where I'd held her when we lost Emma 5 years ago and thought the grief would kill us both. And Marcus, my business partner Marcus Chen, the man I'd trusted with half my company, the man I'd known since college, the man who'd been my best friend for 15 years, both of them frozen in a tableau that would burn itself into my memory forever. Rachel screamed, grabbed the sheet, tried to cover herself, her face going from pleasure to shock to horror in the space of a heartbeat. Marcus jumped up like he'd been electrocuted, his face pale, hands fumbling for his clothes scattered on my bedroom floor. Dave, this isn't what it— Get out. My voice came out calm, cold, the kind of calm that's more frightening than shouting. Dave, let me explain. I can— Get out now. He grabbed his clothes, pants, shirt, shoes, everything in a jumbled pile, and ran past me, not meeting my eyes, his bare feet slapping on the hardwood stairs, the front door opening and slamming with a finality that echoed through the house. Rachel was crying now, the sheet pulled up to her chin, mascara running down her face in black rivers. I'm sorry. God, Dave, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for you to— I stood in the doorway, feeling nothing and everything at once, my mind processing information in slow motion. How long? What? How long has this been going on? She looked away. 6 months. 6 months. The words hit like a physical blow. I thought about the Chicago deal. Marcus had started pushing it 6 months ago, insisting we needed to expand there, that this was our big break, that I needed to fly out today specifically, close it in person, be there for the morning meeting. He'd been emphatic about the timing, about me being gone overnight, about how critical it was that I be in Chicago on March 13th. He'd wanted me gone. He'd needed me out of the house, out of the city, so he could be here with my wife. I looked at Rachel, at the bed, at the life I'd thought we'd built together. Pack your things. Dave, please, we can talk about this. You have 1 hour. Please, I love you. It was a mistake. It didn't mean— 1 hour. After that, I'm calling a locksmith and changing the locks. She started sobbing harder, those loud, dramatic sobs that used to make me want to comfort her, that now just made me feel empty. I walked out, closed the bedroom door on her crying, went downstairs to the kitchen, and sat at the table where we'd eaten breakfast together 8 hours ago when she'd kissed me goodbye and wished me luck on my Chicago trip, and I'd told her I'd be back tomorrow night. My phone rang. Marcus. I stared at it for 3 rings before I answered. Dave, listen, I can explain. The Chicago deal. You set it up. Silence on the other end. You insisted I fly out today. Be there tomorrow morning. Stay overnight. You needed me out of town so you could— I couldn't finish the sentence. It wasn't like that. How much of the company were you planning to take? The silence lasted longer this time. I could hear his breathing, fast and shallow. I found the documents, Marcus. Last week, the ones in your office. The transfer papers showing 40% of my shares being signed over to you. His breathing stopped entirely. I was going to confront you in Chicago, at the meeting, in front of the investors. Make you explain to them how you forged my signature on corporate documents. I kept my voice level, conversational, like we were discussing the weather. But this is better. This is so much better. Dave, those documents. I can explain. Tell me again how long you've been sleeping with my wife. I'm not going to— Tell me how you forged my signature on those transfer documents. Tell me about the Chicago deal and how you set it up with investors you knew would side with you. Tell me how you plan to force me out of my own company. You can't prove— I have the documents, the originals and your forgeries. My lawyers had them for 3 days. I gave them to him on Friday, told him to prepare everything for when I got back from Chicago. Wire fraud, corporate theft, Forgery. The SEC is very interested in cases like this. I could hear him breathing again now. Fast, panicked breaths. What do you want? Your resignation. Effective immediately. You walk away from the company with nothing. No shares, no severance, nothing. I built that company with you. Or I press charges. Corporate fraud. Wire fraud. You'll lose everything and spend the next 5 years in federal prison. You choose. Long pause. So long I thought he might have hung up. Then, fine. Email your resignation to the board in the next hour. CC me and our lawyer. I hung up. Rachel came downstairs 20 minutes later. 2 suitcases, her face blotchy from crying, makeup gone, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt instead of the designer clothes she usually wore. Where will I go? I don't care. Dave, please, we can work through this. Couples therapy. You've been sleeping with my business partner for 6 months, while he was planning to steal my company. While you knew, I stopped, processed the timing. You knew about today. You knew he wanted me in Chicago. Her face went white. She didn't answer. Get out of my house. She grabbed her bags, walked to the door, her footsteps heavy on the hardwood. She turned back, one hand on the doorknob. How did you know to come home? I thought about the little girl at the airport, her smile, her certainty, her stuffed rabbit with the worn fur. Someone warned me. Who? I didn't answer. She stood there for another moment, waiting for an explanation I wasn't going to give, then walked out. Her car started, backed out of the driveway, disappeared down the street. I sat in the quiet house, our house, my house now, and pulled out my phone, searched local news, found it immediately. Flight 237 to Chicago. Mechanical failure forces emergency landing. No serious injuries. The flight I was supposed to be on. The flight that had left at 3:05 p.m. and had been forced to make an emergency landing 20 minutes later due to engine failure. All passengers safe, but the plane had dropped 5,000 feet in 30 seconds. People had been screaming, praying, saying goodbye to loved ones through texts. The kind of near-death experience that makes the news, that makes people grateful to be alive. I stared at the article, reading it twice, my hands starting to shake. Then I remembered something else. The little girl's stuffed rabbit. It had a name tag. I'd seen it when she looked up at me. A small white tag sewn into the ear. Emma, my daughter's name. The daughter Rachel and I had lost 5 years ago when she was 18 months old. Sudden infant death syndrome. The kind of tragedy that breaks marriages or makes them stronger, and ours had done both, and neither. The daughter, who would have been 6 years old this year, who would have had blonde hair like Rachel's, who would have smiled like that, with certainty and love. I walked to the mantel, picked up Emma's photo, the last one we'd taken of her, blonde hair starting to curl, blue eyes bright, that same smile. The photo I looked at every day but had stopped really seeing because the pain was too much. Same blonde pigtails, same smile, same age she would have been. My hands started shaking so hard I almost dropped the frame. I'd spent 5 years trying to save my marriage after we lost her. 5 years of grief counseling and forcing conversations and pretending we were okay when we weren't. 5 years never knowing my wife had already moved on with my business partner, that they'd been planning to take everything from me, my company, my money, my life. And my daughter had reached across whatever barrier separates the living from the dead to warn me, to save me from a plane that would have crashed, to bring me home to find the truth, to protect me one last time. I sat down on the floor in front of the mantel, Emma's photo clutched in my hands, and for the first time in 5 years, I let myself cry, not for what I'd lost today, but for what Emma had given me. The truth, my freedom, a second chance at a life that was actually mine. The house was quiet around me, but I wasn't alone. I could feel her there, in the afternoon light coming through the windows, in the stillness of the air, in the certainty that sometimes love is stronger than death, and daughters protect their fathers even from beyond the grave. Thank you, baby girl, I whispered to the empty room, to her photo, to whatever force had sent a 6-year-old angel to Gate 47 to save my life. Thank you.